I just say thank you so much for that incredibly warm welcome. Can I just acknowledge that we have Sir Bill and Mary English in the house, and can you give them an almighty big praise? Thank you very much. So good to see you. Thank you. And to MPs, delegates, candidates, I want to tell you, National is coming back. And we are coming back to manage the economy well and to end the cost of living crisis. We are coming back to give you tax relief, to fix the roads, to cut the hospital wait lists, to build more infrastructure and to produce more clean energy. And we are coming back to make our education system world-class again. And we're coming back to make our country safer. And I tell you, that's a Prime Minister's job, and if Chris Hipkins won't do it, I will gladly do it, because I will do it. Delegates, you know it, National is going to get New Zealand back on track. And nearly 3 years after I came to Parliament, people still ask me, why politics? And you know part of the answer, because in the National Party we share similar values and motivations. We believe in personal responsibility and reward for hard work. And we know that bigger government isn't better government. And we want stronger families and safe, caring communities. And we love our country, and we look all around the world, and we know that New Zealand's citizenship is a very, very precious gift. But it's obvious to all of us that we are heading in the wrong direction. Now, when I went overseas as a young grad, I wasn't driven out of New Zealand by the cost of living, but it's driving people away now. And when I met a young teacher and a young nurse who had been saving for their first home, but the property price explosion under this government kept it out of their reach, then the fastest ever rise in interest rates made mortgages unaffordable. So when I met them, they were looking to go to Queensland. And I'm telling you, I don't want the biggest suburbs of young Kiwi families to be in Brisbane. And I certainly don't want older New Zealanders who are aching to hug their grandchildren that they talk to on Zoom, but who are growing up in Australia because their parents were forced overseas. And I certainly don't want more New Zealanders becoming victims of brazen offenders riding a crime wave across our country. And we're seeing scenes every day that just don't look like the New Zealand that so many of us grew up in. And I say to you all, enough. Now, my whole career has been spent solving problems and turning opportunities and sorting those out and sorting outcomes and getting things done. And that's the leadership that New Zealand needs right now. So when people ask me why I came to politics, and when they ask you why you're walking the streets in the rain and putting leaflets into letterboxes, I say like you do, because New Zealand can be so much better than this. And people are fed up, and especially in our businesses and on our farms, where red tape and regulations and fees just are getting in the way. And people are saying, it's so hard, and I don't know why I bother anymore. And the only reward for success right now is higher taxes. And Labor and the Greens talking as though successful people are to blame for those who are struggling. And that is so wrong. Kiwis who are struggling need a well-managed economy so they can have higher wages, tax relief, and an end to the cost of living crisis and a housing market that works. And it's no wonder that there's such a mood for change everywhere I go, because people are sick of the division, they're sick of the mismanagement, they're sick of the lawlessness. New Zealand is ready for a change of government, and so is National. Now, governments are defined by their priorities, and a top priority for a national government that I lead will be fixing this economy, because Kiwis are sick of slogging their guts out only to fall further and further behind. During COVID, Labor's printing of money was the 5th highest in the world. Their spending was the 2nd highest per capita amongst the developed countries. The pandemic is over, but the spending has not stopped. And Labor's spending is 80% higher than National's was 6 years ago. And that explosion equates to an additional $28,000 per household a year. But nothing, absolutely nothing, has improved by 80%. And in fact, most things have gone backwards. And to pay for all of that spending, Labor's taxing more and they're borrowing more. And the government is now collecting an additional $100 million a day in tax. But even that's not enough, because now debt has exploded from $5 billion in 2019 to $71 billion today. And I tell you, that is just credit card economics. We're now spending more on the interest on our debt than we're spending on primary schools or police. And servicing that debt is now this government's fourth highest expense. You know, this is New Zealand under a Labor government. And I'm telling you now, New Zealand can't afford 3 more years of it. A national government will stop the waste, and it's going to bring back responsible economic management. We're going to manage the economy for the middle-income family I met who were at risk of losing their house because of rampant interest rate rises. We're going to manage it for all the Kiwis putting in long hours, getting their kids off to school each day, paying their taxes and doing the right thing, but they're still going backwards. And we're going to manage it for the small businesses who've been crying out for staff and just can't understand how there can be 50,000 more people on job seeker benefit, 50,000 more than when National left office. And with such a fast rise in interest rates, New Zealanders with mortgages feel like they're on a treadmill that's just going faster and faster, and they're at risk of falling off. New Zealand needs a fresh start. It needs a different approach. It needs a new team. It needs real solutions. National's team has been working hard on how we'll actually take New Zealand forward. And I want to go quickly through some of our plans with you, because some of them you might know, but some you might not. And Nicola talked yesterday about how we'll grow the economy and we'll bring an end to the cost of living crisis. We're going to provide tax relief because you earned your income, you should keep more of it, and you should decide what you get to do with it. Farmers and growers, they are the backbone of our economy, but Labor's obsession with new rules and regulations has put them under siege. And I'm telling you, a national government I lead will get Wellington out of farming. Yeah. And that's why we've set out 19 actions to make life so much easier for farmers. And we'll put hard limits on forestry conversions on prime agricultural land that are devastating rural communities and are driving young Kiwis out of farming. But above all, we're going to bring respect back to the relationship with farmers and growers that has evaporated from Wellington. Because if you're working every hour of the day feeding New Zealand and the world, your business matters, your voice matters, and your community matters to us. Now let's look at education, because there's nothing that I'm more passionate about, because we should be teaching the basics brilliantly. But you've heard it, half of New Zealand's year 8s are not where they should be in the basics. Half of the total roll of students are not even regularly attending school, and getting a good grounding in the basics that are going to set them up for life. So under National, every day, every child in every school will do an hour each of reading, writing and maths. And here's another policy, electrify NZ. National will deliver on New Zealand's commitments to be net zero by 2050. And we're going to make it easier to build projects like wind farms so that New Zealand can double its supply of clean, renewable electricity. And to help with families that are juggling that difficult work-life balance and work-childcare balance and the cost of living, we'll give 130,000 low and middle-income families a tax rebate on early childhood education, up to $75 per week, paid directly into their bank accounts. And the genius idea is we're going to pay for it by ending the flagrant addiction to consultants and contractors in Wellington here. Now, here's some more quickfire policy. We're going to extend free breast cancer screening for women from ages 69 to 74, and in the process, we will save the lives of 65 women each and every year. We're going to end the ban on gene editing because other countries have the technology that will help our farmers lower farm emissions, and so our farmers should have it too. We're going to deliver more nurses and more midwives by making their student loan repayments up to $22,000 over 5 years, provided they remain working here in New Zealand. I got to tell you, Three Waters is a goner. And no one's going to cry over that. We're going to keep local assets in local hands, but with strict rules for investment so we all have clean, reliable water supplies. And we're going to get infrastructure built. And I recently had a vet tell me that because of the Waikato Expressway, a great national government project, she could now fit in 2 extra jobs each and every day and still get home to her 2 young kids at a reasonable hour. And that's the difference that really good infrastructure makes, and a national government that I lead will deliver it. Now, delegates, you can tell that all of our policies have things in common. You know, they speak to National's values of rewarding hard work, of encouraging growth and helping New Zealanders get ahead. They're affordable, they're practical, they're deliverable, they're common sense. And they will get New Zealand back on track. Now, there are more policies, but let's come to law and order, because I won't ever forget meeting an Auckland dairy, a couple who worked in a dairy, who told me how they slept above their small shop and their young child slept near the counter. And then at one night at 2 a.m, there was an almighty crash as a stolen car went straight through the front of their shop in a ram raid. And I just want you to imagine that, because I've met many victims of crime, and even more who worry that they'll be the next. And in some shops, it takes courage now to go to work each and every day. But under a national government, New Zealand will be different. And under a national government I lead, Labour's soft on crime experiment is going to end. It hasn't worked. There's more crime, there are more offenders, and there are so many more victims that the money's run out to help them all. And I've already announced that National will back police to tackle gangs, we'll ban gang patches in public spaces, and we'll stop gang members from gathering in public. And we're going to tackle youth crime too. Under National, people who choose to commit crimes will learn that there are consequences. National's military academies for repeat serious young offenders are needed because Labour's wet bus tickets that have just the effect that you'd expect. None. We're going to use those academies to help turn those kids' lives around. Now, over the past 5 years, violent crime has increased by 33%. Gangs are growing faster than police, and retail crime has doubled. And the police can't deal with all this alone, and it's time that the courts stepped in with tougher consequences for offenders. So today, I'm announcing tougher sentences for criminals, more support for victims, and more rehabilitation for more prisoners. Now, I don't pretend there are easy solutions to preventing crime, but I can tell you that what doesn't work are soft messages like Labour's target of a 30% reduction in the prison population. I would really love to see that too, but only if there's a 30% reduction in crime. And therefore, I'm announcing today that National will remove that prisoner reduction target. National says that New Zealanders have a right to be safe and to feel safe in their own homes, their own businesses and at work and in the community. And so National will restore real consequences for crime with stronger sentences for convicted criminals. Now, I announced last week that we'll make gang membership an aggravating factor in sentencing. And too often, the public has been left aghast at weak sentences for serious crimes. Now, sentences are a punishment, they're a deterrent, and they show the public that justice is being done. And judges do need discretion to account for the unique circumstances of each case. However, New Zealand sets no limits on how much a judge can reduce sentences. And that means they often end up far lower than victims and the public expect, and far lower than is required to acknowledge the harm and suffering that's been caused. So, for example, a 60% sentence reduction was given to a 19-year-old who, carrying a knife, kicked down the door of a pregnant woman, assaulted her and kidnapped another person. And the sentencing starting point was 8 years and 6 months, but it was reduced to 3 years and 5 months. And that's why I'm announcing today that National will impose a new limit on judges' discretion. They will be allowed to reduce a sentence by no more than 40%. Any more than that undermines the purpose and the impact of the sentence, and it undermines the public's faith in the courts. National also says that an offender will receive a reduced sentence for their youth and for remorse, but only once. You might be sorry the second time, and you might still be young, but if you've enjoyed a previous sentence reduction because of it, then that ship has sailed. It's a reminder. It's a reminder to learn from experience. Now, we're also going to restore the 3 strikes policy for serious offenders. This was brought in to ensure that the worst repeat violent criminals faced appropriate sentences for continued offending. And Labor, in another of its soft messages to criminals, got rid of it. We'll bring it back, but we'll bring it back with clearer guidance on where judges can make exceptions and where they can't. And I make no apology for being tough on law and order. This government obviously isn't putting the public's safety first, but I'm telling you, a National government will. We're also going to end the practice of taxpayers paying for written cultural reports about offenders' backgrounds in an effort to reduce sentences. Now, this used to be a rare practice, but this practice has now morphed into a cottage industry, and it's lowering sentences and taxpayers are footing the bill. There were 8 taxpayer-funded reports in 2017, and last year there were more than 2,400. And so National is going to unwind this growth. Offenders will still be able to ask the court to hear from someone who knows them, but taxpayers won't be paying for that. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the money that would have been spent on those reports for offenders and we're going to give it to victims instead. National believes that victims should be at the heart of our justice system. Victims receive support in various ways, and there's not enough money for grants for things like counselling and transport to and from court. We'll put the money in there, boosting funding for victim entitlements by about 1/3. And this will mean more help for victims to deal with the aftermath of and trauma of crime. Now, the final point of National sentencing policies relates to rehabilitation for prisoners. And it makes tremendous sense that if you have people locked up, you should do what you can to turn their lives around. That's ultimately better for them and it's better for all of us. The more offenders who change their ways, the safer our communities will be. But today, not all rehab programs are available to all prisoners. Remand prisoners, these are the ones who are awaiting trial or sentencing, but are locked up because they are deemed a risk to society. They can't access all of our rehab programs. And with nearly 1 in 2 prisoners being on remand, that means a significant proportion of prisoners are missing out on the opportunity for proper rehabilitation, or we're just starting it too late. And therefore I'm announcing today that under National, all prisoners will be eligible for rehabilitation programs. Because if you want to try... Because if you want to try to turn your life around, we're here to help you do that. But if you reoffend, be warned, under National you will face tougher consequences. A National government is serious about protecting the public, and we're serious about there being real consequences for criminal offending. National will rebuild what Labor has eroded because Labor's changes have not made New Zealand safer. They've made it much, much more dangerous. Now, delegates, in the next 100 days, the polls are going to open for advance voting. And this will be an election that will determine the shape and the future of our country for years to come. And I think the choice is incredibly stark. Labor can continue only as part of a coalition of chaos with all the taxing, all the borrowing, all the wasteful spending, all the fluff, all the slogans that would come with it. And the alternative is a National-led government managing a strong economy well so that New Zealanders can get ahead. A strong economy can afford the things that we all want: more accessible health services, better education for every child, more environmental protection, better highways, resilient infrastructure, safer roads and safer streets. Labor will give you excuses. I'm telling you, National will give you results. New Zealand is in tough economic times, but a National government can turn things around. We've done it before, and we can do it again. And a government that I lead will light the way, and we will bring all New Zealanders with us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, New Zealanders want a change of direction, but National is taking nothing for granted. And in these next 100 days, we are relying on you for your help. We're relying on it for every leaflet that you deliver, every door that you knock on, every dollar that you raise, every hoarding that you put up, every hoarding that you put back up a second or a third or a fourth time as well, every National social media post that you like and share, and every conversation that you have with your friends and neighbours that helps us secure another party vote. I'm telling you, every single action is necessary and every single action is appreciated. And the combination of those single actions together will build the momentum that will take us into government so that the turnaround can begin. We're going to fight this election campaign as though our future depends on it, because it does. We're going to fight to win because New Zealand needs a National government. National will end the cost of living crisis. National will lift incomes and provide tax relief. National will restore law and order. And ladies and gentlemen, National will get things done. National will get New Zealand back on track. So let's go change this government, let's get to work and let's get this job done. Thank you very much.